roots and your historical connections to Cape Ann and to Annisquam?
I think I was about 6 years old, and I stayed at the customs house. My family were friends and business associates of J. Redmond Clark, and we were their guests, and we stayed in the customs house.
Oh, fun. Hazel, did you stay in the customs house?
No, I didn't, and I had a different recollection of how we came to be in Annisquam. My father worked for Henry Worcester, who had a house in Norwood Heights, and Henry Worcester later became my grandfather-in-law, but that's another story. And one night when the rest of the family apparently was away at a camp in New Hampshire, before I was born, I guess, my father, Henry Worcester, said to my father, "John, come home with me tonight and have a swim." It was awfully hot in Boston in those days. So my father went and he had the swim and he sat on the porch over there in Norwood Heights. And that did it. I believe they bought this house from Roger Babson. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you remember the war years here?
Oh, vividly. For one thing, there was to be no conversation at the dinner table, that big dinner table, during the radio broadcasts of news that went, it seemed forever, from 6 to 7, but my parents were so eager to get any news on the radio of the war in Europe, where Bud Bornhoft was, and the war in the Pacific, where my brother was. So
Wow.
that's what we did for dinner conversation. Another thing was that there was a contingent, if you remember, posted at the lighthouse. Who were they? Coast Guard people?
Must have been.
They were guys, and they did calisthenics on the lawn at the lighthouse every morning, which we could watch. My father felt a great compassion for them, having a son in the Navy that was close enough. So he invited them for dinner here.
Oh,
and they were thrilled to come to dinner. And when they saw Nancy, they were even more thrilled.
I don't remember any of this.
Nancy was a very good-looking young lady, and that was the way it was. We all had to have blackout shades so the bombers wouldn't find us. And, of course, a big house like this with all different kinds of crazy window shapes, that was a great challenge for my mother, but she managed it.
Oh.
And we certainly remember that. And the other thing that affected our being in Annisquam on weekends in summer and fall was that gas was rationed.
Aha.
So you had to have 2 cars, because then you got 2 allotments of gas to put in the one car.
Oh.
And they were very conscious of saving their gas so they could come down here on weekends.
Yeah. So it was your retreat and the place that you all loved to come to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I was working in Cambridge, so I drove with my father, left him off at Revere Sugar, and then went on to Cambridge and spent my day, and back here at night in reverse.
Oh, wow. What were you doing? What was your job in Cambridge?
I was teaching at Harvard Radcliffe, and children who were probably from East Boston, set in a group, and it was a Harvard project. And so I was involved in that, and
oh, that's wonderful.
Teaching and to bring these kids that all had a bad disease. What was it?
They had cardiac problems because they had rheumatic fever. Yeah.
And so we were tutoring them.
Oh, wonderful.
And And so that's what I was doing in Cambridge.
My father would have been involved in the yacht club.
He was a treasurer.
You know, he was a governor of the yacht club, and he resigned his position. There was a dispute over letting in a member of some ethnicity that the others didn't approve of, and my father resigned on that issue. The young man involved had been a previous member and had fought in the Second World War to boot.
Oh my.
I have something to add about the music.
Wonderful.
My father-in-law, Ted von Rosenving Jr., also played the piano. You knew Ted von Rosenving. And he and his group, they would be older than you, started the Annisquam Follies. He wrote the Annisquam Follies. And they performed in that every year. I'm not sure whether it was at the club or at the village hall. Do you remember the Annisquam Follies?
Yeah.
And they wrote the Old Squam River, which is to the tune of Old Man River.
Oh.
And that was a great staple for years. People were always singing it.
Hazel, you've been involved with a lot of organizations here in the village, and I know you're now involved with the Good Neighbors. So what makes efforts in groups like that meaningful here?
Well, it seems to me that people in Annisquam really care about one another. And the Good Neighbors is an expression of that. And it puts on activities for the community. It looks after the elders, makes sure that they're getting visits. Now there's a walking group they've established on River Road where it's flat. Mm-hmm. And Good Neighbors does a lot of good and arranges rides for people who need rides to the hospital and that sort of thing, or to doctor's appointments. It's a wonderful group, and many volunteers are involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
And the
there's,
church is very involved.
yes, the church is very involved. And then there's the Annisquam Sewing Circle, which bills itself as the oldest women's benevolent society in the country.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sure
I didn't
that
know.
there may be others that claim that. But, and they used to sew to raise money. So, what other groups are there? The church, the Good Neighbors, the players that you talked about.
Yeah.
There must be more.
All right.
Well, the Village Hall Association,
Oh,
of
right.
which our cameraman is chief,
Yeah.
also looks out for so many village interests and maintains the village properties, which is the white buildings in the center.
Historic
So
buildings.
That is vital.
So it's amazing how a village takes care of itself, just from the people, that closeness that
Yes.
people develop,
Yeah.
and that affinity.
Once a year, you would hear a little bell ringing. A gentleman would be pushing his wagon up Squam Rock Road, good trick right there, and he
Right.
would be the scissors and knife grinder.
Oh, yeah.
And you would hear the bell,
He
and
doesn't come anymore.
no, he doesn't, and I would like him to come. And then there was the organ grinder. You remember the organ grinder?
Maybe I confused them. I'm not sure.
Well, they both pushed a similar device up.
Oh.
The organ grinder, I honestly can't remember if he had a monkey or not.
Oh.
But I'd like to think that he did, because Mother always gave me a quarter or whatever to go out and put in his cup.
How has the water and the habitat here informed your lives or daily life? I know you like to swim.
It makes my summer.
The water. Uh-huh.
And the swimming is something I've always done. Mm-hmm. And
I understand you even do it when it's too cold.
She does.
Because you get warmed up if you swim fast.
Right. So so you would wake up in the morning first thing and go down through the pasture to have a swim, or afternoon? Okay.
And our father would always come. We would pick him up at the train, which was not air conditioned, and the men complained bitterly about these trains that were baking in the sun all day to receive them as they left their work. And my father and mother and I would go right down to the beach, and he would take his swim off the rocks as soon as he got home.
When I was commuting with Dad to Cambridge, we always took a swim the minute we got home.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of swimming with my father.
Yeah.
And I can remember one kind of a funny story.
Oh, you're beautiful.
He had an extra pair of teeth that popped out down at the rocks.
Oh no.
And we spent a lot of time looking for them.
Oh, I bet. Did you find them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think I've counted 5 Annisquam marriages in my family. Our oldest sister married Albert Hale, and the Hales came to Annisquam as renters for many years.
Yeah.
So that was the first
Now
one.
they built a house over on the other side of the hill.
That's right. Their grandchildren are still here.
Oh my. Okay.
And then what would be the next Annisquam marriage? Was it me? Yes, okay.
Yes.
I married Ted von Rosenving, whose grandfather was the one who brought my father home that night.
Sounds like an arranged marriage.
It certainly looked like one because they were also involved in business together.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, I was the next one. Then my husband's younger brother married an Annisquam girl. Liz Bornhoft and Charlie Moore.
Right.
Charlie came across the pasture to take Liz away, but she's still here. And there is one more. My brother-in-law, Bill von Rosenving, was alone. He was divorced. And one night I said to Ted, why not ask Dorsey Ryan up for dinner? And they met, and they married.
Oh.
They met at our dinner table. He was quite deaf and didn't hear a word she said, but...
So how did you two learn to sail?
How did what?
Do you remember learning to sail?
Yes. J. Redmond Clark taught all of anybody as old as I am and probably a lot younger, taught us to sail.
He was Alice
Yes.
Clark's husband. Alice Clark's.
Alice Clark's husband owned and lived in the 2 houses that are the customs house and the house
Yeah.
up on the hill. That was the Clark's
Mary
house.
Curtis's house now.
And I think in those days there was no yacht club organization. There was no group for teaching sailing or anything. J. Redmond Clark did it.
Okay.
And the first time I went out on a boat, a fish boat, of course, and there was quite a boatload, and I was standing on the bow, holding on to the mast, and all of a sudden we took a turn, and I was in the water underneath the sail.
Oh no.
You might be interested to know about that the yacht club closed during the war.
Oh.
So my group of teenagers did not have yacht club. And when the yacht club reopened, it consisted of a jukebox in the game room.
Oh.
But we all found that pretty fast.
Yeah.
And it was a long time before other activities got underway. But the jukebox was
Yeah.
that was it. I think we all care enormously about preserving open spaces. And our father was one of those involved in getting the trust to get the Squam Rock Land Trust together. And that's been very important to us.
That was a very caring group of
Yes.
men who really preserved the pasture for eternity.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm thinking of something I miss, and that's Peter Piper's shop.
Oh, yes.
You remember Peter Piper?
Oh, yes.
He had a structure. It was like a studio, or maybe he lived in
It's
it
in the
too.
fire station.
Oh, it was in Dee Dee Sargent's house. At the bottom of the hill was Peter Piper's shop. That's the way I
Well-
remember it.
Maybe he moved.
Maybe he moved. We'll agree. And it was really kind of dark inside, and he had sundries. What was very important to me on arriving in Annisquam for the first time was that somebody would take me, please, to Peter Piper so I could get a new pail and shovel.
Oh.
Because in those years, it wasn't plastic, it was metal, and with lithographed bright scenes on it. And of course, last year's had already rusted away, so you had to have a new one. I mean, it was really important. And so he would have beach balls and toys and probably a lot of other necessaries.
Amazing.
And Margaret Fitzhugh Brown did a portrait of him, which hangs in the village hall.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah.
And
So that is a change. There used to be commerce in the village with a store and post office, right?
oh yes,
Right? And we don't have that anymore.
no, the post office and the postman, and of course there's a wonderful portrait of him, again by Margaret Fitzhugh Brown, that's in the village hall. She was a nationally well-known portraitist, and she did wonderful things in Annisquam.
Right.
And I understand that she was the impetus for getting the waxworks going.
Oh, really?
Yes,
I didn't know
yes, because she was involved in the arts all over Gloucester.
that. And that's been sustained for lots of years.
Wow, it's a huge success.
Is climbing Squam Rock?
Oh, Squam Rock
Traditions.
was very important.
Oh.
Learning to climb Squam Rock was a rite of passage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was so important. And
It's nice to have a picture, too.
yes.
Oh, you have pictures of
Squam Rock, yes.
climbing Squam Rock?
I think there's one over there.
Oh, right.
yes.
Okay.
And as a child, that's where I would, with my friends, have a picnic supper on top of Squam Rock. Why it had that appeal, I don't know, but we did that.
Yeah.
And as each of my great-grandchildren have achieved Squam Rock.
Anything else you remember that you want to talk about?
Well, the cove,
Yeah.
we were not allowed to swim in the cove.
Ah.
And we were it was very polluted because all of the houses on River Road and Leonard Street maybe drained directly into the cove. Even the ones not on the water side, the pipes went underneath the street directly into the cove. And we were told, if you should fall off the dock at the market by mistake, be sure to keep your mouth closed. Don't take in any of that water. And now it's so beautiful and clear. And
Yeah. There was a story about a refrigerator, wasn't there?
oh, this is so clear in my memory. In the early days, most of the houses that people rented had ice boxes. And when electric refrigerators came in, the ice box began to be a hardship. So a number of families in Belmont, where I lived, and in Winchester, where my husband lived, I had the moving truck come around once a year and take your massive GE refrigerator to Annisquam for the summer. You know, those were big,
I'm sure.
heavy looking things. And in my case, the St. Bernard and my brother got to ride in the truck with, and I was insanely jealous. This was not, I was not part of it.
Right, right.
So that was what people did until they began to own second refrigerators. Could I mention the Willows?
Please,
Okay.
yeah.
The Willows. On approaching Annisquam, after you left the Riverdale and you passed what is now the Willow Rest on your right, there was a divided road, and the willows were growing.
We're there.
Were there, both on either side of the road and in the middle, and thus the name, the Willow Rest.
Right.
And one other thing that I remember about coming to Annisquam weekends was there was a popcorn man where the War Memorial is in Riverdale.
Oh.
He had, a glass and machine, whatever.
Right out
cooker,
on the street.
Right in front of the War Memorial.
Right.
And of course, I begged to have popcorn, and that would slow down the trip, but they gave in.
Yeah.
I remember before 128,
Yes.
and it was a long, winding road up the coast.
Yes.
It must have been exciting.
It was different.
Well, I just think though you roll down the windows and you're right on the water and you can smell that salty ocean breeze and you slowly work your way in here.
The excitement begins when the dog gets the first sniff of salt air.
Oh.
And knows it's coming to Annisquam.
Right.
And begins to whine a bit. That's
So dogs were part of your
Oh,
lives.
yes.
Oh, always.
Always.
Off camera, we can tell about my father losing his pants
Oh.
sailing. When Dad lost his pants sailing, normally my brother had one crew on a race for the sailboat, but if it was really heavy weather, they sailed in any weather those days. And my father, a golfer, was drafted for extra weight.
Oh.
So on the return trip, somewhere near the beacon, they capsized, as boats did when it was really heavy going. My father, in an interest of saving his investment, was swimming. Took off he had long pants on, took them off and tied them around the centerboard so that he could better swim and retrieve all the accoutrements that were floating away.
Oh.
The life jackets and
I've never heard this story.
well, it gets better. And then eventually they're towed in with other boats that are capsized and got to the mooring. And my father of course, someone had pulled up the centerboard at some point. So the pants were long gone.
Oh.
And my father is sitting there in Lobster Cove at the mooring in his underpants. And he said to my brother, "Now, as soon as you get home, tell your mother to come down here and get me with a pair of pants." So my brother went off to the club in the lodge. And what was most important on his mind was to file a protest with the race committee because somebody had wronged him.
Much more important.
This is important. And that took some time. And so by the time my brother wandered on home and came in, my mother said, "Where is your father?" "Oh, he's at the mooring. You're supposed to take him some pants." Meanwhile, my father has been sitting in Lobster Cove at sundown being eaten alive by gnats. You know what it's like there around 6 at night. And my mother eventually showed up with the gnats and with the pants and rescued my father. And I don't remember that there were any repercussions.
Right.
I think my father was so thrilled to be out of there alive.
Oh.
Do you remember your grandparents?
I remember my grandfather very well, so I'm smiling through a lot of this. There's a photo of him in the other room that I talk to now and again. And there's also a photo of you with Blaze, the dog.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sitting on top of Blaze.
Yes, he was
Right.
a very forgiving
So
dog.
he played checkers with me every single night.
Did he?
Yeah, until one day I had him cornered. I was about to beat him on the next move, and he said, "Okay, well, time for me to go to bed." And he never played checkers with me again after that.
Really?
Yeah, I think he figured he'd taught me well, and that
So
was
now he was done.
it. Yeah, but he was always bought me books and encouraged my education, and was so the only grandparent I ever knew. But he was to me the whole of this place.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. You remember a little bit about the history of this house, right?
Well, I remember I smiled when Hazel mentioned Roger Babson, because I remember as a little girl in the yard with my grandfather, and Roger Babson would drive up on the other side, not where we come in now. He'd drive up on Adams Hill Road in his limousine, in his pajamas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then my grandfather would show him. I was probably Carter's age, 4 or 5. He would show him around the yard. They would talk about the trees. They would talk about the gardens. He would look at the house and say, "Oh, you need to do something about that gutter." And then he'd go back and get in his limousine and drive back to Wellesley.
Can I tell my Roger Babson story then?
Yeah.
When they visited, they parked there because they visited somebody else in the neighborhood first. And they would approach our house on their annual visit, coming on the porch at this end, which sort of surprised us because there was no warning. Well, Roger Babson had run for president on the prohibitionist ticket.
Ooh.
So we'd be sitting on the porch having Tom Collins's. And my mother rushed to the kitchen to start squeezing lemons to make lemonade. The rest of us discreetly put our drinks under our seats. Well, my father put his drink under the glider that he was sitting on, and then the glider lid. And as the Babsons were sitting down for their visit, my father's Tom Collins had turned over, and there was this stream of yellow liquid coming out from underneath my father and making its way slowly down the porch. This had the rest of us mesmerized. We didn't know what to do about it, but anyway.
Well, we went to the beach every day, and
Yeah.
so I think my ultimate career as a naturalist, came
Yes.
from digging in the sand. And I have a picture of me with at 1 year old, still in a diaper, with a very ugly face, and apparently I had just eaten a periwinkle.
Oh.
So whole. So those kinds of things, those experiences, really led me to where I am now.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, the sand and the smells and the animals.
I went down to the beach early on a Sunday morning to dig clams. We would have steamed clams as a first course before Sunday dinner. And during the war, when there were, of course, U-boats spotted off the coast, it was a little bit spooky going down to Lighthouse Beach when there might not be anybody there, with the expectation that there would be possibly a German spy washed up on Lighthouse Beach.
Yeah.
Wasn't Ted, your husband, responsible for bringing clams back to light? I remember he brought some from the other side of the bay and planted them, and it took.
He brought, we always had the regular steamers, whatever you call those clams.
Right.
But he brought the big hen clams over and claimed that the reason that we can find them there now is that he planted some, which may very well be the case because I never remember getting them as a child. But they can be found there.
Man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps